prove it, that doesn't prove anything. Okay, over the long term, it's not oppression of social gender conditioning in this case, unless we wanted to get really complicated and argue that it was changing biology as well. But even then, it couldn't really be done. There's all these cultural terms and cues, like, men always think with their and all that kind of thing, and the woman having a headache, all this kind of idea, that doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from this basic thing that is so important to understand, because the discrepancy is so great. And trying to talk to the girls about it at all, if you were to bring it up, but especially these ones that I mentioned before, they get so angry because they know, well, but they may not know that they're wrong, but I think they're just wrong. There's no evidence for it, and you get some guys that'll want to defend it too, like, because they want to believe it so badly. But girls just don't. You don't see it in all the objective markers. So you got the cultural things. You got the porn watching. Girls are alone in their homes. They can look up whatever they want. The data isn't really there. We can collect things very surreptitiously, as Facebook proved in their emotion study recently. But the sexual offending crimes aren't there in women. And if they are involved, there's always a man as well. Have a look. It's crazy. It's just crazy. What happens? Who frequents prostitutes? How often do you masturbate? It's just. And when you find these girls that are freaks or whatever, when guys are looking for that, what's the actual case? Well, what happens is they're either socially motivated, so they bring that first to entice guys because they know their drive controls them and impacts the way they reason, and then they don't really keep it up, or they move on to the next guy once they've gotten wise, gotten bored, what have you, right? Okay, so sex crimes aren't covered. I'm just trying to make sure I get all the points that I would generally say, so I never have to have this conversation again. Yeah, the other common one usually will go something like, alright, well, if that's true, let's go right now. There's a bed, there's a sink, there's an alley, like, and the girls, they never go for that, right? Or very rarely. And then the argument usually is, well, maybe they just don't want to sleep with you. And then I say, well, I'll find one of my friends who'll be perfect for you. Or anyone in this bar. Or anyone in the world. Like, when you've got these model chicks making these claims, look at how you react when I say, well, let's go up to any guy in this bar and see if he'll do you right now. You don't go, oh, what a horrible stereotype. Men are not like that, because men are like that, right? If that she just knock on a door and go, hi, yeah, no, I'm just doing a survey. Are you happily married? Yep. Oh, 35 years. Oh, that's impressive. Your wife home? Gardening at the back. Okay. Is your daughter home? Yeah, okay, good. Do you want to have sex now? You do. Fantastic. And that's how it would go, and then they'd get divorced. And the other thing we drive is, the second you come, it falls back to the other two motivators. So girls won't really get that effect, but guys, it's only the instant that he comes, he'd be like, I've just ruined my marriage, this was a mistake. But they don't, it's very difficult to find women that really understand this. They'll make the good statements, and yes, there are bigoted sexist judges that are in the courts, but on this point, I think they might be right. Like, the things like, guys thinking, well, she's drunk, I'm more likely to get laid, whereas the female perspective is, well, if I was really drunk, even if I said yes, it's borderline rape because I couldn't consent. Like, that's just so many worlds apart. So many worlds apart. What's the other thing? Let's see. So girls. And the other thing with freaks, yeah, so it's either, it can be done through the sensual. I'm not saying that girls that can't love sex and really enjoy sex, but it has to be mediated through those other things. And it doesn't impact their thinking the same way. They don't get driven lust crazy, and the ones that think they do, I don't think it's the same. And when you look at the behaviour sets and you look at the way it's mapped out, I mean, almost anyone has a chance with any guy at some point. It's not, the same with some chick. Maybe if they just broken up with their husband, they were emotionally distraught, but again, that's the social vector. Yeah, so there's one other point I think that I usually make. There's so the social, well, yeah, that if they are freaks and they haven't done it through the sensual route, it'll be through a pathological social route. They might be freaks, but they're not really having sex. It's some type of only weird psychological power thing, and you have to call them daddy, and they'll stalk you for the rest of your life, and slash your tires, and kill your next 3 ex-girlfriends. Well, they all end up exes eventually. But, yeah, and when I say all of these things, like, especially the guy stuff you don't even argue with, and the other cases like, yeah, and that's not just the social slut-shaming element, it really isn't. And if you look at the flip side of the argument, and because there's a giant jump at that, there's a threshold gap right there that really damages my spectrum. It's one of 4 elements, but 2 are serious, and that's one of them. If you flip it, if I was at a party saying, oh, look, I could get pregnant just as good as you, I could get pregnant better, I could have a baby in 8 months, I could do it in 5 if it wasn't football season, or, something guyish like that, you would think I was insane. But it's literally the mirror of that system, right? That is the biological system that's at work. The baby can't gestate in a box. Female spectrum on the whole don't understand that drive. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, but that is, I think, the reality, and that's why you don't see the behaviours. If it was really like male drive, it wouldn't easily be able to be socially oppressed. Like, that almost sounds like conservative, political, old, outdated thinking. But it's not. It's the case. And there are other things, and I can't cover everything. I mean, we know there's some effects on testosterone, but it's much more complicated than that. We know if you just there's still set limits. You can pour testosterone in, and guys, once they're at their maximum, they won't go higher. There's a whole range of things. But and guys rely on the other things too. But it's always as well as. That's why when you cut out drive, and then suddenly the guy just went cold. It was just like I was dead to him. We were getting along. I thought we were falling in love, and then, psh, it's not that any of those other things stopped. It's just that I couldn't go forward without the third. Whenever you see a girl, I just don't understand. It comes up so often. I don't. Yeah. So anyway, that's why I've made this video, to avoid that conversation. When you see a chick and they start saying these things, if you say, well, let's go right now, they don't say no because of you necessarily, or particularly, they don't say no because they've just rubbed one out in the public restroom. It just isn't the case. Alright, so feel free to hate about that. I mean, I'd love any constructive arguments, but I know the literature very well, so if you're just going to post things, I mean, there are a lot of poorly run studies out there, but when behaviour speaks, when you look at it over the long term, when you look at how guys behave, there's too much. And I think most girls at the end of the day would kind of agree. Or maybe if they don't understand the social elements, or they haven't thought about it that way. That's not to say that guys aren't thinking about telling their mates about it during as well, but they wouldn't stop in the middle, All those cliches, the chick answering the phone or doing her taxes, that's, And I've heard amazing stories about lesbians and incredible orgasms, and that is not a surprise to